welcome Craig Ruff to our midst today. In terms of a bio, many of you have met him. He's lived in the Trust compound for almost 19 years, since 1978. Worked very closely with Bauji, Erich, Rano, Mani, all Baba's Trust workers in the past at the compound. He does a lot of running back and forth each day, currently between Bao and Erich, carrying messages and involving himself in the details of the running of the Trust. And he has recently put some of his thoughts together in a brochure called In His Trust, which he's happy to share with us tonight, and also will be leaving some extra copies. Feel welcome, Craig Ruff.
I'm with Hearts here, and I'm not in Hollywood. Living in the Trust compound, I don't get a chance to do that much exercise. So now and again, in the past, I would take a walk from the Trust compound to Marizad, or bicycle from the Trust compound to Marizad. And occasionally doing that, I would also take the opportunity to go in the car with money from Marizad to the Trust office, occasionally alone. This is a little, I keep hearing my own voice, it's a little disconcerting. Do you really need it? Yeah. A little less. It makes me self-conscious. I don't want that. So one day, Les, the heart should be so close, we don't need this. One day I posed this question to her as we're sitting alone in the back seat, driving back to the Trust office. Money, I wonder this. Is it better to have been connected to the household of the Lord, like so many of us have been, so many thousands now have had that special, intimate connection to His household, to know something of His humanity, how He lived as a man, His ways, His gestures, His mannerisms, His intimacies, to meet you all and be with you all in an extraordinary, familiar setting, an intimacy that is very rare, seldom happens. Or on a big darshan program, you hear Baba's giving darshan, and it's my fate to have his darshan once, bow down at his feet, and disappear back into my own life wherever I am. I posed this dilemma to her. I said, Mani, my feeling is, this is my feeling. I don't know. My feeling is the opportunity to have had the connection to His household this way brings me closer to Him, learning all of these special things. Definitely His truth would be there for that one heart in that one moment. But all the other facets of His humanity would not be known to that person. They'd have to make it their way on towards the truth in a different way. And she very hesitatingly, but knowingly agreed. And my feeling is, all of us are really deeply connected. Not only in this room, but in so many other centers. The few thousand of us, there's only a few thousand, who would have had that special connection to the household of the Lord. Okay. Okay.
Regular. My shell didn't work, mate.
That special connection that has been given to us all. It's a great, great, great thing. Just sitting here, just before as Michael was speaking to you all, admittedly my own mind was wandering what to say. I've been going to other centers and saying something of a similar nature in different roundabout ways and in the highway of my mind and heart. But out of nowhere came an old memory that I never had before, and I just remembered it now, maybe 17 years ago. And in my youthful uncertainty in being close, being somehow given the opportunity to be close to the mandali. I don't know what made me do it, but I was alone with Erich for that one moment. And I wanted to bow down to him, not his feet, just out of appreciation. I think in standing in front of his cabin, the Mananash cabin. So standing up, I just did this to him. When my eyes opened up, what did I see? I saw him bowing down to me, Erich. And it was such a bowing down. I just remembered this now. It was such a bowing down. I've never experienced such a thing. And all my youthfulness. I was 28, but more like 15. I ran away. It was too intimate. What movement? What submission? What giving way? What giving in? And what made me remember that was what I would like to do, but still can't quite do. But it is out of appreciation. Bow down to you all for the effort that you are making in this center. It's a great thing. Not easy, we all know that. We all know that now, Baba's work. It's not easy. It'll crush us all the way to liberation. But it's a great thing. And I really appreciate it. So in my heart, I'm thinking of how Erich bowed down to me on that occasion. And I would like to do that to you all. You got a long way to go yet. I repeated this, I said this last year, but it's such a sweet moment. Last year I called up Erich from America. I hadn't talked to him in a month. And he gets on the phone, and the first thing he says to me, I go, Erich, it's Craig. His opener to me is, you remember, huh? His opener to me is, what do you want? What do I want? And what comes through the mind's eye, just as he says that, is how Erich would tell us all in the hall now and again, how Baba told him in the hall, sitting in front of them all. Baba's sitting there and he's asking each one, Pendu and Erich and Bao and Kaka and Baidu, what do you want? I want you, Baba. I want your will, Baba. I want your love. Asks them all, they give the answers. Baba then tells them, if the master ever asks you what you want, ask for desirelessness. So this comes through my mind's eye, just as he says, what do you want? So I say, you know, Erich, that reminds me of a story. In fact, over international. That reminds me of a story that if the master ever asks you what you want, you should say desirelessness. So Erich, what I want is desirelessness. So he does a characteristic gesture on the telephone, as you all many of you might know. He has this characteristic, So over the phone he goes, desirelessness. When I first moved there in 1978, before I started working in the trust office, I'm walking through the trust office. Moved there in January, maybe February. It was February. Moving towards the registration office. Erich is standing outside the trust office, and behind him, Rano, and behind Rano, Jacko Caraco. As I move in front of him towards the registration office, all of a sudden I hear him say, where are you going? Very sternly. I mean, I didn't know it. He really wasn't stern with me, but it seemed very stern with me. Where are you going? Erich, I'm going to Mehrabad. You're going to Mehrabad and you didn't tell me. So I just responded spontaneously with, the fault is mine. And when I said that, those were good words. When I said that, he had a big smile on his face, and behind him, Ronald had a big smile on her face, and behind Ronald, Jacko had a big smile on her face. And his face. It's the second time I've done that. And if I found myself a week or so later, alone with Money and Erich in the trust office. And I'm telling Money. They're asking, what will you do here? I said, Money, Erich is standing up and Money's at her desk. I say, Money, I will just give my hands, all my hands, and all my heart to Baba to do whatever. I said it very quakingly. It was a very serious, sincere moment in my life. Very deeply sincere. And she's looking at me, her whole face just gets real full. She's taking this 28-year-old kind of quaking boy, in a sense, as he's saying these things. And I get up and Erich says to me, you are always welcome at the trust office. And then from then on I started working. And I alphabetized the alphabet many, many times for the next 15 years. And I wondered to myself, what kind of work is this? It is so unbelievably mundane. It's like it makes no sense. To do this, to do that, what is this? What's the point of all of this? To backtrack for a moment, after my first visit to India in 1973, I always had a desire to write poetry. And I'd come back in 73 and I started writing a poetic play. In those days, my mind was very ethereal. I loved getting lost in ethereal thoughts. And I'm going to write this play now, poetic play. And one of the few times in my life I had a dream in which Baba gave me orders. Very clear, undeniable. He's sitting in his chair. I'm in front of him in Mandalay Hall, and he says to me, what I want from you is not poetry, but action. And I woke up and I go, that's the end of that. Put the poetry away, put the books away, put it all away, and I got some very practical office job just to do what needed to be done. So I thought to myself well, it'd be nice one day to work at the trust office with the Mandalay. This was even before there was a possibility of it, and it came about, backtracking a little bit. I don't know, you all must be familiar with how there's so much activity in the trust office. People are moving around, and vehicles are moving, and one car, and a Jeep, and another car, and a Swanee, and a Hoopo, and the taxis, and everything else. And one day I'm standing in front of the trust office with Money, and she's waving some people off as she would wave, that wave. And you happen to be alone for another moment. And I said, Money, I don't know if I ever told you this, but before I moved here in 1977, I had my astrological chart done. And it said that I would move to India. Before I even thought I would move to India. But as the person's reading the chart, they go, but I see that you're moving to India, but I see that you also will live in a parking lot in India. So with that, Money had this gesture where her jaw would just drop out of surprise. Oh, no, Money, I'm just joking. Just joking, Money. So after I had done, I felt a lot of practical work in the trust. But I felt I had, in a sense, grounded myself, to use a 1970s word that was popular then. I felt I could finally return to poetry and start writing poetry. And I'll read a few poems out to you now. My eyes soften when your face becomes my heart. My eyes soften when your face becomes my heart and blossom beautifully in a world where you no longer show your human light. Should I smile? It is because some part of me now, in sudden secret, holds you more closely than the closeness of your sight. As the dream fades from my dreaming mind, only your eyes remain, eyes that are golden. There, the luxury of light is free and falls from your height to my depths, falls and reflects your ancient loveliness new upon my silhouetted soul and makes me beautiful with the truth. How your eyes are deeper than the whole world. Perfectly strange, this unseen white web of love between us. What comes and goes on these lines is my life radiant with silence when I face your facelessness, and your strong remembrance sails me into my deepening self. The heartbeat of our togetherness carries me away from all things and thoughts. This has no resemblance to your picture. It does not sound like your name. There is just one movement, one breath, one desire. I am not lost, but I am being lost. And love is being found. But inspiration is different than understanding. That was a painful lesson for me. As much as there might be artistic inspiration in my life, inner life was still not there, even though I was in their company. For all those years, my own inner life still was not yet established. True, I tried to be helpful, tried to be sincere, tried to do what I could. In a sense, love them. But my own inner life with him was not yet established. And when it came upon me, it was a great shock. A shock so much that I call it my own midlife crisis. I was cornered. I didn't know what else to do after all these years of being with them. I was 39 years old. What to do? Where to go? I thought I had done everything I could do already. Really cornered. Beyond frightened. Beyond frightened. Frightened is too small a word. So what I started to do was I started to keep a diary. And any thoughts or observations or perceptions or intuitions that would come to me, I would write them down in a diary. But I started to finally realize, as Baba says in a message that he gave in America in the 50s, which is now in life at its best, about the big gulf in this day and age, it's okay, and big gulf in this day and age between theory and practice. And I finally had to admit to myself, I was still all caught up here. All. I knew the words, I heard the stories, I knew all that. It hadn't sunk deeper, it hadn't become part of my life. It hadn't become my life. And what to do? So these perceptions and different things would come to me, and I would honor them, write them down, and say, okay, Craig, at last, you have to have faith in these things. You just have to. You have to put it into action. You have to take chances. You have to take a risk. Now, in the previous 10 years, I did try to efface myself. But I did it in a way that for some inexplicable reason, I didn't know how to digest my own effacement, my own attempts to efface myself. But now I recognized that I had to try to find out again, as frustrated as I was, as deeply frustrated as I was. Beyond deep, I can't even think of a word. It's into those silent, accessible depths that we all feel time after time in our lives. So I started to remember him more and more, but simple remembrance. And a thought like this would come to me. Remembrance is like the Own point. All things come from it. So small. Yet everything comes from the Own point. I say to myself, okay, remembrance. I'm going to have faith in that. That remembrance, his remembrance more and more and more. Not just sitting saying, Baba, Baba, Baba. Sometimes going up a big uphill climb, I would do that. So one day, and wanting to begin to share content, wanting to begin to have an adult dialogue, at least with myself, and maybe eventually with others, I turned to Erich, and I had several occasions to read out these, what I call entries in my diary to him. And at the end of reading them out, I asked, what did he think? And he thought they were worthwhile, that there was so much in them, that one had to read them again and again, because there was so much in it. It's unique. So I said to him meekishly, Erich, would you make that I asked him, could I make it into a book? He goes, I asked him, would you make that the foreword of the book? So poor guy, I got him on that. Which he did. He did make it to the foreword of the book. So I'll read out a few of these. These are all things, as I say, the thoughts or perceptions. I was trying to retrain myself. To overcome our limitations is not to be overcome by them. But we must be aware of these limitations. It is not by denying our limitations that limitations are overcome. Rather, we have to begin by recognizing them, for these limitations are what describes our ego consciousness. Honest awareness of limitations encourages non-identification with them, and non-identification is the beginning of inner freedom. The longing of the heart at first is very small when compared to all the other desires within us. And yet if we continue to long, elongating our longing, we find that it creates an opening inside of ourselves and becomes an expansive force in our lives. A desire, even a great desire, will one day burst like a punctured balloon because it has no opening that leads within. At some point in time, the desire will become so meaningless that it will collapse. Small longings are wrongly judged by the mind scale, which gives weight to false things. But through small longings, eventually the expansive heart of love opens. The small longings open up into a great expansiveness, like the smallness of the pupil of the eye, or the smallness of the Own point. The cry from your heart being is the sound that attracts his being within you. Your cry is your heart cup. Deepen your cry, and the heart cup deepens. This is the sound he is waiting to hear from you. Remember to forget, but don't forget to remember. Become blameworthy. Become worthy to carry the blame. The burden will make the other burdens less. It will make your ego less. And that reminds me that as I was trying to renew my remembrance of Meher Baba, and out of that renewed remembrance began to come just the beginning understanding of how to digest my own attempts to efface my own ego. One day, I'm in front of Bauji, and he is blasting me for something. It's inconsequential what it is. It's all the same thing, just to blow the ego away. And there's some other people in his office, and they're watching this scene. And I'm thinking now, okay, this is a moment of effacement. And just as I'm taking that blasting, Baba's message comes to mind, again from Life at its Best, what he gave in America, that the football that gets kicked higher gets propelled over the goal. That ego, over the goal. It didn't matter what was being said to me. Maybe I did it, maybe I didn't do it, maybe I did it in the past, maybe I'll do it in the future. It doesn't matter. It's the ego, and whatever the ego is, it's really false. I'm really something different than the ego. What am I? I'm telling myself, what am I? Really, Baba tells us, I'm infinite and eternal. That's what I am. That's what I am. That's what each one is. Each one of us is. So just as I'm thinking these thoughts and daring to feel this within myself, a sense of inner effervescence comes. A little sense of it. A little sense of inner freedom. Something has been lost in that little moment. And I find a different fresh air within inside myself. Nothing great, but directive. Definitely directive. Not imagined, not wished for, not longed for, directive. So I'm almost laughing to myself. It's in a moment, a millisecond. And I'm almost finding, isn't this funny? Isn't this funny? These folks over here, they think I'm getting humiliated. Bauji over here is doing whatever he's doing. And inside myself, I'm quite free. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what they think of me. They can never know me. And I don't know myself. It doesn't matter. And then again, Baba's words, learn the art of taking your stand on the truth within. This is it. I need to begin to try to take my stand on the truth within. Because that's what I really am. I will always be one limitation after another limitation, one weakness after another. It's going to keep going on until the last breath. And then another thing he tells us. That's what I am. I means the ego. So I'm going to try and stop. I'm telling myself I'm going to try and start not identifying with this thing that everyone wants to take pot shots all day long at anyways. Because I'm something different than that. Maybe not the great experience of it, but the faith in it, which I couldn't do before for some reason. I don't know, the intellect was always getting in the way, or I didn't even know the intellect was getting in the way. Why not dare to do it? So another occasion, a big trust meeting's going on. Erich and Bao are there, all the trustees are there, a good portion of the community is there. And I'm trying to say something, and one of the trustees, again, just in this occasion, just blasts me for some reason. And again, just then, across the mind's eye, Again, in a millisecond comes this little memory, which gave me a whole other nuance in that moment. And it's something that Erich is very fond of relating in the hall in the past. And it comes from the story comes from the perfect master, Ramakrishna. Ramakrishna is telling his kids about anger. And he's saying, let's say you're in a boat. You're going down the river, you're paddling down, and another boat comes along, and there's nobody in that boat. Now, if that boat's going to begin to collide with your boat, do you get angry at that boat? No. Why? Because there's nobody in the boat. There's nobody there. You don't get angry. Only if you see someone in the boat do you get angry. Get out of the way. But at that moment, there's nobody there. So he says the same thing also it is when someone loses control of themselves. There's nobody there. Hello? Anybody home? No. So this passes my mind's eye. And I take a look at this person. And I really intently look at them. A millisecond again. And I can see there's nobody there. It's like the hands are moving wildly and the face is full of wild kind of contorted animation. But this is not good so-and-so really, who I know on other occasions is like this or that or something else. And maybe if it isn't good so-and-so, it's not usually the way he is. And I let it go. And then 2 moments later, after you talk, then I again say, now this is what I would like to say. And this is how I feel about it. And that for me was a good lesson, because after the meeting I didn't say, oh, that son of a... Now this guy did this to me, he humiliated me in front of Erich and Bao and this and that. Why didn't he pull me aside? No. Doesn't matter. Because there's a difference between... That was a mistake that I made. That's right. I'm saying to myself now, I didn't know how to uphold my own dignity when moments of humiliation would come. My pride would get hurt. And I didn't know how to uphold my own dignity. There's a difference, I feel. When we're humiliated, when I'm humiliated, and if I let my pride get hurt, the reason I feel so resentful about it is because I am now standing psychically naked in front of the person or people that I am with. And that's a terrible thing, to be psychically naked in front of someone. And there's deep resentment, and grudges come from that. But if I choose instead to take a stand on the truth within, that really the truth is, the undeniable truth is, that there's nothing but inner oneness. That is the truth. That is the inner fabric of the universe. That's what it is. We can do whatever we want to do, but that is the undeniable truth. Well, that's my nakedness. I'm naked spiritually, not psychically. And that nakedness brings me in closer intimacy with the other person, even if they don't know it. I'm closer to them, maybe in that moment, than they are to themselves. Because I believe that really we are one. Believe, have faith. Not talk about it and hear the words and everything else. I'm taking that stand. I'm going for it. I believe it. And in that comes my dignity. I uphold my own dignity. It's towards the truth. Okay, whose life isn't filled with humiliation? Isn't every day we go through different little humiliations and shames and blames and abuses and everything else? It's the nature of life. Everyone's got it. I love Erich for saying this in the hall just last year. He said his life was filled with nothing but embarrassment and humiliation. But significant embarrassment and humiliation, because he used it to efface himself. Just last year I asked him some question about some things about himself. He could have done this or that or many other different things after, I'm telling this to him after Baba passed away. And he just looked at me and he goes, about himself, he says, brother, I was born to efface myself. That's it. Born to efface himself. Nothing more. And that's everything. Everything. And I'm beginning to get a sense that when I get into the ego game, I have this, you have that, we have this, you don't have that, the whole self-display that goes on, all I'm going to do is create suffering for myself and suffering for you. There's no way out. We just play a little suffering game for some length of time. But instead, if I dare to say, enough is enough, we are really one. Not that oneness from the hippie days. I'm not talking about that. I'm not talking about that. No. Because we all kind of left that behind in our histories. We might turn back those pages and kind of reminisce about them in our own minds or hearts now and again, perhaps. It's not that. This is the truth. In my search, as I'm trying to get closer to Him, I started to recognize in all the tremendous activities that go on at Baba's place. It's Baba's work, Baba's activities. I started to recognize that just the work was not enough for me. Action is necessary. Efficiency is necessary. But efficiency alone is not sufficient. Efficiency is like the foundation of the action. It's necessary. Efficiency is like the foundation of a building. Necessary. But how to make, if it's just the foundation of a building without these walls and ceiling, it's cold. It's cold. And if I'm just moving around my life doing one efficient action after another, efficient action after another, and claiming it's for Meher Baba, the truth, infinite, eternal love, and I'm been very efficient, where's the love? Where's the love? I'm telling myself, I don't want to be miserable. I want to have love in my life. So the sense that was starting to come to me was, okay, what I can do is I can begin to put those values into the action that make it warm, that have to warm up the action, that will build the building on the necessary foundation of efficient action. So one moment of patience, followed by a moment of self-control, followed by a moment of loving kindness, slowly warms up the action, slowly warms up my life. And I found that for me, as I did those actions, in small, tiny little ways, nothing great, nothing big, I'm a small person, that these things on their own, naturally, spontaneously, efface the ego. Maybe not the great effacement that the Mandli had to go through with Baba. There's no way I'm ready for such a thing. I know that. Brother, wouldn't you want to have lived with him? No, I'm not ready. No, I'm not ready. I know where I am. I'm just at the very, 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 very beginning of it all. Don't rush me. But to try to make the attempt, that's what I'm telling myself at the age of 47 now, nearly 48. At the age of 47. And I found that as putting these values into the action and making the action warm, again, another spontaneous thing begins to happen, which I didn't account for, didn't think about. It wasn't a technique, New Age technique or anything of the sort. Everything is coming from the force of His remembrance. Is that a sense, small but precious, a sense of inner oneness is beginning to come. So to use a simple analogy of how to describe it, if it's going to, when the atmosphere changes, and there's all clouds there, the atmosphere changes, the weather changes, and you get a sense, oh, it's going to rain. Now you haven't felt the rain yet, but you get a sense that the rain is going to come. You can't feel it, you don't feel it, you get a sense of it. So there's that sense of oneness is there. It makes the worthwhileness of daring to accept the humiliation or the so-called blame or whatever it is. There's an old term in the old mystical Sufis of the Middle Ages that said blame was the high road. Blame was the high road because it effaced the ego. And they knew it. And they went for it. These stories that Erich tells us in the hall, is that so? Do you all recall that one?
Yes.
Or Perfect Joy of St. Francis. Do you recall that one? Some of us know. Yeah. These started to, in a sense, it wasn't like, oh, it's nice to hear these stories. For me, it's nice to hear these stories, the warmth of Erich, the whole ambiance, everything, it's Baba's place. But to begin to say, really, not is that so, but in a sense, have the acceptance. It doesn't matter. It doesn't mean not to put your heart into it, but the ego's little bruises, it's okay. And move on. And my concern, out of my concern for the changing scene in India, I wanted to write something based all on Meher Baba's words. And I put myself to the task of doing so. And I got it done with his help. And it's called In His Trust. And I've been sharing it with many people, everyone in India and some folks here. And anyone who wants a copy, please see me afterwards. It is free. And what I began to feel was that my feeling is, this is for me, and I'm just trying to share these thoughts and revaluations, that the next phase of life, instead of me getting lost in activity, I would rather be lost in his remembrance, in the activity. Not so much the doing, but the being in the doing. And as I'm rereading Baba's words, I'm struck time and time again out of the discourses, about so much, everything that I missed. I took for granted. Oh yeah, I understand that. Yeah, I've read that. Oh yeah, sure, we talked about it with Baba. Blah, blah, blah. That's how we connect with each other. We know the word, and gone. And I started to see, this gives me a whole nother avenue, a whole nother approach to the second half of my life, to a way of being with Baba in a real, vital, unimagined way. As these thoughts are coming and I'm writing them down, they divided themselves into 3 segments as I looked at things. Something about the individual, some things about the trust, some things about the community. Now, admittedly, because I live there, my concern was directly there. But honestly, we all go through the same thing. There's no way out of it. It's the same boat. Here or there, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. That's for sure. When I shared this final thing with Bauji, first he teased me. Oh, philosopher. Now you've become philosopher. But within a few paragraphs, he saw that I was being very serious and sincere in this. And I could feel right away, there was tremendous one-pointed concentration that I am not used to from him. And at the end of reading out the whole thing, he says to me, why have you limited it to the trust estate? It should be for the world.
Continued on side 2. No need to rewind the cassette.
As I honestly did read it with some trepidation. 2 discourses that really came to mind that had great appeal to me, directive appeal to me, called the task for spiritual workers and work for the spiritual freedom of humanity. In the past, when I used to read these things, they frightened me. I thought, my gosh, what is this? Is this my Baba? It sounded like something far off, far away, something I couldn't identify with, almost proselytizing. I don't know. These are my conceptions. I don't know. It's like, no, I want to get back to something else. But as I read them this time, I thought, this is a whole way to approach action that I never imagined before. Another way that in every moment of my life, no matter where I am and no matter who I'm with, there is the opportunity to uphold quietly within my own being, unobtrusively, not intrusively, the truth of our spiritual oneness. So it's an active thing. Work for the spiritual freedom of humanity. Now, I'm not taught, the sense of it is not proselytizing. Who is humanity? We're humanity. Our friends, our family, ourselves. The people we work with. To begin to inculcate that simple truth. And here he says, so beautifully, out of work for the spiritual freedom of humanity, there is no gift greater than the gift of spiritual freedom, and there is no task more important than the task of helping others to achieve spiritual freedom. Those who have understood the supreme importance of spiritual freedom have not only to strive for it themselves, but also to share the God-given duty of helping others to win it. When I read that, I thought, oh, what a nice way for all of us to begin to share what He has given us. Each one of us has His grace in our hearts, for sure. But how good are we at really sharing what's been given to us? How good are we? I thought, here He's telling us, this is a way to do it. To help to realize the duty for yourself and also to help others. In a quote from the Task for Spiritual Workers, because of its supreme importance for the true and final well-being of humanity, spiritual work has a natural and imperative claim on all who love humanity. It is therefore very necessary to be quite clear about its nature. The whole world is firmly established in the false idea of separateness. And being caught up in the illusion of duality, it is subject to all the complexities of duality. Spiritual workers have to redeem the world from the throes of imagined duality by bringing home to it the truth of the unity of all life. A thought came to me some weeks back about the avatar, about the descent of infinite consciousness. Usually we say amongst ourselves, so I've thought in the past, I can't change anybody else, I can only change myself. I just really can only change myself. So here, the avatar, infinite consciousness, descends into his own infinitely separate unconsciousness and becomes one with everything and everyone. So he can change himself. The task for spiritual workers is to help me in this universal dispensation of the truth to suffering humanity. You have not only to prepare humanity to receive this truth, but also get established in it yourself. It is extremely important to remember that you can help others to gain spiritual freedom and to come out of the illusion of duality only if you yourself do not forget this idea of unity while working for others who are inclined to create divisions where they do not exist and who thus allow no respite to spiritual workers. Divisions, that's our life. But to dare to take the stand, it doesn't matter. My sense is anything that we do for the truth, the slightest, smallest thing. In the past, most of my life was spent on the great, looking at the sky and wanting everything in the sky, the stars and everything, the imagination, just roaming free and having everything. And I neglected the small little step in front of me. Neglected that. The small little step representing, in a sense, the heart. So a little analogy came to mind to help me explain it to myself, to have some faith in it. Let's say you put a bucket, an empty bucket, underneath a water tap. And the water tap is leaking. One drop of water after another drop of water. The efficient mind comes along and says, we're wasting water here. And you make the tap so tight, any water's going to come out of this tap. But the heart does something different with that one drop of water. The heart, like an open, empty bucket, sits underneath that tap and waits very patiently for that one drop of water, after another drop of water, after another drop of water, and eventually it will be full. There's a lot in this, and it's a little difficult to say all the little nuances that I have honestly thought about. But my sense was, overall, to try to begin for the individual, from Baba's words, to take that own personal stand on the truth within. It would be a very adult thing to do. But last year, surprisingly, even in mentioning this to some folks, as I was beginning to try to share some of these thoughts of Baba and try to have faith in them, shaky as it is. No, that's not practical. No, we can't do it. This isn't me saying this. This is a Baba word. No, we still can't do it. It's not practical. Okay. The travail of the New World Order. Travail. It is a travail. We all know about it. It is a travail. Our life is a travail. And we are slowly moving, at least inside our own beings. We will by and by also, inside our own beings, the New World Order, inside of ourselves. Baba says, to perceive the spiritual value of oneness is to promote real unity and cooperation. Brotherhood then becomes a spontaneous outcome of true perception. The new life that is based upon spiritual understanding is an affirmation of the truth. It is not something which belongs to utopia, but is completely practical. We can do it. It's going to be difficult. You guys have done pretty good so far. And I'm really proud of you for it. It's inspiring to me. In India, there's so many things we're going to have to go through there, no doubt about it. Hope we can do it. Help all the other centers too. When I go from place to place, I hear some of the little things here or there. The political side, I have no interest in. Because I know it's this, or that, or this, or we dance around. But are we eventually, by and by, to let these things dissolve, let the grudges, let all the harborings dissolve, and begin to share what has already been given to us. It's already there for us. So the next aspect that came to me is our organization, the trust. What's going to happen as our precious ones return into His ocean? What is going to happen there? What's going to happen? So again, with Baba's words, here's you might all find interesting. This is a quote from Erich. One day, sitting with him alone about authority, and I'm asking him about authority. What is authority? And worrying, in a sense, about the future. And he said, and I wrote it down specifically that day. And little did I realize that many years later, I would be putting it in this. He says, authority comes about naturally through the lessening of the ego. But if the authority is purchased, as done in the world through power, influence, and money, then the person in authority has the responsibility to win people over. If that is not achieved, then you have a situation in which someone's position becomes an imposition on the person who is not an office bearer. So instead of that false assertion that we all make now and again into whatever roles of authority that's in our lives, if we would dare to try to uphold that truth of oneness, it's bound to win. It's bound to win. I found something else in the discourses that meant a lot to me about what to do about, beside my feelings, about the trust for the future. And it's a message in the readiness to serve, where Baba talks about different kinds of societies and ends with this, but I'll mention the whole different kinds of societies because it's so interesting. In a society dominated by merely material conceptions of life, service is interpreted in terms of providing for bread or clothes or other physical amenities of existence. In a society which is responsive to the value of intellectual culture, Service is interpreted in terms of spreading learning in different forms. In a society that has developed taste for beauty, service is interpreted in terms of organizing the production and distribution of works of art. In a society responsive to the ineffable values of the heart, service is interpreted in terms of constructing those channels which will facilitate the culture and expression of the heart. And then Baba ends with this. In a society alive to the supreme importance of the spirit, service is interpreted in terms of imparting spiritual understanding. Of these different types of service, the service that is concerned with spiritual understanding is the highest. Because spiritual understanding includes the right perspective to all human problems and promotes their solution. My feeling is, here's a helpful directive for us. What would be better than to try and choose that direction in and through all of our activities? So an organization tries to, administratively, as I try and say here, excuse me. Anyways, an administration, an organization tries to uphold that in and through all of its responsibilities for doing everything it has to do, discharge its responsibilities properly. That even beyond that, it wants to uphold, it wants to value. It's more important to uphold that oneness. For the individual, he also individually tries to feel it's the most important thing to uphold that oneness. That is the truth. So in our community life, if we blend an organization together, we take an organization and the individual, that makes a community. Inner communion, outer community. Both seem very necessary for a well-balanced life. The communion with Him privately in the intimacy of our own hearts, and the sharing of that, of what He's gracing our hearts with. Two different expressions, two beautiful expressions, but different. Usually in organization and individual, there's alienation. The organization wants one need, oftentimes. Individual wants something else. They negotiate. They work out a bargain. And eventually, oftentimes, it dissolves again. Because the needs aren't the same. The needs are not the same. But if the needs are the same here, that truth of oneness, the organization has to uphold its administrative responsibilities. But in and through it, dares to say no. The most important thing in all of this, regardless, is still. It doesn't mean there aren't differences of opinion, of course. But in 360 degrees, there's different vantage points. If I'm 360 and you're 180, we're going to look at it from different points. But are we looking at the same point? Or a triangle in the different opposites. Sometimes in trying to deal with the opposites, we try and get in the middle, but we move here. In a sense, if we go just to the point of the triangle, in a sense, just an image, it's a plane higher. It's in the middle, but a plane higher incorporates both. That inner oneness is the only thing that really, honestly, genuinely, not diplomatically, can incorporate the both. Diplomacy cannot do it. It's always juggling and moving things around. The heart can swallow all differences and keep the oneness. So if my feeling was, through those kinds of things, our community could begin to grow. The final message that I ended with a conclusion here before that, the one place last year, just as I was daring myself to even dare to sit before others and try and share something from my heart. I was in one place and I said, where's the love? After 25 years, where's the love? I've been going at this. Where's the love? I don't have any love. And it was nice to feel and see that so many others start going, yeah, where's the love? Yeah, after all this time, where's the love? I don't know. And then I read this message of Baba's, because we're all in the same boat. When I came across it, it was kind of humbling for me. Kind of. It was humbling for me. Because it put things in perspective again. Am I doing this? No. Well, then where's the love? You ain't getting love. Because you're not towards the truth, Craig. You're for yourself. But even though I'm for myself, His grace is there. But regardless of that aspect, in the New Humanity message, and I used to think the New Humanity was something 300 years away. My feeling now is it's right now, it's us. If we dare. If we dare. And we're daring. You're all daring. You did a great job. You're here. A lot of obstacles. And you'll do a lot more. Humanity will attain to a new mode of being and life through the free and unhampered interplay of pure love from heart to heart. When it is recognized that there are no claims greater than the claims of universal divine life. Do I really uphold the claim of universal divine life with all the other claims in my life? Do I really uphold that as the highest claim in my life? Am I bringing thought, feeling, everything to that point? In a sense, moving it, at least moving it in that direction? When it is recognized that there are no claims greater than the claims of universal divine life, which, without exception, includes everyone and everything, love will not only establish peace, harmony, happiness in social, national, and international spheres, but it will shine in its own purity and beauty. And I know in the past I used to read this and you get into international spheres and all that. I was kind of blown away and just moved to the next page and forget about it. But when I bring it down to my own simple little life and go, wait a minute, he's saying this. Do I have the claim that it's the highest claim in my life? No. Well, then no wonder I'm just going in survival mode. I'm just barely hanging on to His Dhamma by His grace. Because I haven't dared to say that this is the greatest claim in my life. That's why I'm miserable. It can't be any different. I'm not in the movement towards what is the inner fabric of truth, inner fabric of the universe. There's only one life. Indivisible. Baba has even given us descriptions of what life would be like if we dared to do this for the individual, in our social life, and in the civilization. He's even given these descriptions for us. And I'm going to read these now, because they're so valuable for me. It's from the infinity of the truth. In spiritual infinity, all comparison is out of place. There is no smaller or greater or hierarchy of claims, privileges, and rights, and valuation remains unclouded because of the unmarred perception of the one in each and all. Since everyone in creation is not only in spiritual infinity, but is that indivisible spiritual infinity, then everyone is first in importance, and no one is second. In social life, the recognition of the spiritual infinity of the truth will mean a challenge to individualism as well as to collectivism. It initiates a new way of thinking in terms of an indivisible totality, and it discards all the relative values of comparison in favor of the recognition of the intrinsic worth of everything. for me, when I finally started to recognize that everything has value because He's in everything, to have that faith in it, that He really is in everything. He can be found in the so-called meanest of jobs and tasks, and that's basically my life in India, just moving this around and that around and whatnot. And it can be perhaps in some ways humiliating in some ways. Yeah. Whatever things I do. But He's in everything, and it doesn't matter. To dare to do that. So many times I've been in the compound all alone. Everyone's at Marizat or Marabat or whatever it is, and I'm pushing papers here and doing this here and doing that there. And finally it's beginning to dawn. It's okay. It's okay. Finally, I'm a slow learner. It's okay. In a civilization based upon a true idea of spiritual infinity of the truth, there will therefore be no problems of majority and minority, of rivalry and competition, and of those comparisons and laborious assessments that so often become a shelter for pride and separative ego. Life then will be infinitely simple and whole, because the illusions that create rifts and complexities will all have disappeared. This is our eventuality for sure. We will get there. We will. Maybe painfully, resistingly, but we will. I ended the booklet like this, and as I wrote this, I did pose it to the people who work at the trust and on the trust estate, but it applies to us all, no doubt about it. So for your lives and for the center here, it has been our great fortune to have had decades of intimate moments with beloved Baba's Mandali. In the forthcoming years, the few precious ones who remain will be making their final surrenderance to Him. They will be taking with them the intimate interiors of our hearts. Much of what we know and feel for beloved Baba comes from their gracious company. Undoubtedly, it will take a personal toll on our lives and will be an irreparable loss to our hearts. It has been said that time heals all wounds, but the one who made this statement never met Baba's Mandali. Does love's wound ever heal? But Baba's grace and work will continue in our lives by giving us the challenging responsibility to develop the trust estate and this place. Like any living thing, growth occurs both outwardly and inwardly, on the surface and beneath the surface. Consequently, how we develop outwardly will depend on how we deepen inwardly. We have been given the opportunity to cultivate a spiritual garden of inner possibilities, the beautiful flowers of mastery and servitude, spiritual understanding, spiritual work, divine love, preserving the atmosphere, Mandali connection, and an endless array of other delicate and subtle and personal expressions. All are in our care. These beautiful fragrances of intimacy with beloved Avatar Meher Baba are for us to share with each other and with the world, whose heart will be captivated and mind charmed and drawn to visit. It is a privilege. It is incomparable in the world today. It is our privilege, and it is Baba's pleasure, because it is His own voice that is whispering in our hearts how blessed we are. This is the grace that is being given to each of us as we move into the 21st century. Baba is with us. Jai Baba.